instead to be the kind of leader that was committed to creating a better atmosphere, that was committed to creating something greater for those around them than they were for consuming for themselves. And then one of my very best friends and partner in crime at 2 Words, Colton Leonard, encouraged and challenged the athletes with what was called the ruined leadership, or the 3 enemies of your impact. And he challenged these athletes in a really personal way to be on guard and to watch out for the things that would ruin their impact. Things that would come in and if they didn't keep their head on a swivel would take them out. Things like the pressure to perform. There's nothing wrong with pressure. There's nothing wrong with competition or with challenge. But that if we're not careful, the pressure to perform will get so high that it'll cause us to compromise on our integrity. We'll compromise on a little thing here and a little thing there. And if we compromise on the little things, well, then you know what we'll do? We'll compromise on the big things. And those compromises will lead to ruining our impact. And so he challenged him with that. Or the enemy of personal pride. Not the personal responsibility and daily excellence type pride, but instead the kind of pride that would come in and say in some way that I am exempt from fill in the blank. I'm exempt from this rule. I'm exempt from doing this. I'm exempt from this thing that everyone else has to fall under. And he encouraged them and said, listen, never forget that no one is exempt from stupid, from serving others, or from doing what's right. It was just an incredible challenge. And so I was so excited to get to share that with them. And then I got the opportunity to share the traits of a servant leader. 7 traits. And though I've got them a little bit out of order, if you were to stack them 1 to 7, move one of them around, it would say servant as kind of an acrostic in kind of the middle letters. But I want to share these with you because I'm convinced that you can't be a leader without first serving. That I'm convinced that you can't be a leader if you're not willing to serve, because leadership is not a title. The leadership is not a position or something that you are given. In fact, leadership is an action. Leadership is something that you do. So I want to encourage through and think through these ideas because as a leader, there are just certain things that leaders do and that servant leaders do. And if you don't do them, are you a really leader? If people don't follow you, are you really a leader? And so I believe that these are 7 traits of a servant leader. Number 1, that a servant leader is a great listener. You're a great listener. One of my mentors once told me, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them accordingly. That you should use them in proportion to one another. That I, as somebody who has 2 podcasts and speaks for a living, am someone who loves to hear the sound of his own voice. I love to talk. And yet, in positions of leadership, if I am quick to speak, then I might miss out on what's really happening. That if I am quick to make judgment, if I'm quick to pronounce what is, then I might miss out on the opportunity to understand what I previously didn't see there. That when I take the time to first listen, when I seek to understand before I seek to be understood, then all of a sudden I can see the world in a whole new way. That when I pause to ask the question, why? Why are you doing this? To the student athlete who gets to the edge, who gets to that place every single time, and you've been working and sacrificing, maybe you give him a second, a third, or a 4th chance, and he gets to that same point every time, and then he self-sabotages. And you're quick to go, why are you doing that? And you're quick to fill in the blank and to talk, and you're slow to listen. You miss out why it is that I'm convinced that kids do what they do because they believe that it's genuinely what's best for them. That if a kid self-sabotages, it's because he believes that it's better to self-sabotage and stay in control than to be vulnerable and trust someone who might let him down. That's why he does what he does. And so to take time to pause and to ask the question, why? Why are you doing this? And then to listen. Have you heard of the power of asking why 3 to 5 times? That if you ask why 1 time, they'll give an excuse. If you ask why 2 times, maybe they'll give you their second excuse. But once you get to the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th time, they start running out of excuses and you get a little bit closer to the real reason why. I'll give you an example from the game of football, and maybe it'll help illustrate the power of asking why and then listening. All right, so let's say we're in a game, Friday Night Lights, big crosstown rival. We're there, offensive linemen, the Hogs, hand-on-ground studs. They come up to the line. Everybody's screaming. The game is on the line, and that offensive lineman jumps off sides, right? I know it never happens at your school, but believe it or not, at some schools, offensive linemen jump off sides, penalty, the flag is thrown, and Coach Lou, why? Right? Why did you jump off sides? Well, he might say, I didn't hear the snap count. Really? Because 10 other dudes heard the snap count. 11 guys on defense heard the snap count. 10,000 people in the stands heard the snap count. How is it that you are the only one that didn't hear the snap count? Why did you not hear the snap count? Well, that was an excuse. Why didn't you hear it? Well, because I was focusing on my assignment. I was focusing on what I had to do on this play. Well, why were you focused on that and not listening to the snap count? Why didn't you just know what it was that you were supposed to do? 10 other guys knew their assignment such that they could hear the snap count. Why didn't you know your assignment? Well, because I didn't spend enough time studying my playbook. Well, why didn't you spend enough time studying your playbook? Well, Coach, there's this girl, and she came over and she started hanging out with me, and I spent more time hanging out with her than I did with my playbook. Well, why did you spend more time with the girl than you did with your playbook? Like, Coach, I'm an offensive lineman. Like, these opportunities don't happen very often for me. So I didn't want to pass it up, right? And so, well, why didn't you know how much time to spend with her and how much time to spend with your playbook so that you could know your assignments without thinking? He says, well, because I don't know how to manage my time. And so let me ask the question, why did this young man jump off sides? Was it because he didn't hear the snap count? Was it because he didn't know his play? Was it because he didn't study? Was it because he hung out with the girl? Was because he didn't know how to manage his time, right? You try to take away the girl, that's a losing battle, right? You throw more assignments at him, right? Maybe he does them, but he didn't do the ones before, so why would he do the next ones, right? You say you just got to know better, you got to listen better. We make the crowd quieter. There's certain things we just can't do. The one thing that you can change that will change all the others is teach him how to manage his time. But we would have never gotten there if we were quick to speak and slow to listen. But instead, let us be quick to listen and slow to speak. Let us listen, because what happened, and it's true for this football example, is true in our coach's office, is true across our campus, is true in our marriages and with our children, that we must be quick to listen so that we can understand. Because even though, right, someone may see it differently than we do, it doesn't mean that they're wrong or that they're right. It just might mean that they see it differently. And because of the way that they see it, it makes perfect sense to them, and it makes no sense to us. And so by listening, we can hear, and we can better lead and better serve. So I want to encourage you as a servant leader, as you take your coaching and your leadership to the next level, be quick to listen and slow to speak. And I might add, let anger lag far behind. Be a great listener. Number 2, a great leader, a servant leader, has a growth mindset. That you are committed to being 1% better every single day. That you understand that where you are today, though it may be greater than you've ever been, is not nearly as great as where you could be. And this mindset is one that we work very, very hard to instill in our athletes. It's one that we drive in over and over again, especially in off season. We drive over and over again the power and the importance of the next rep, the importance of the next meal, the importance of the next test, the next assignment, that each one, though we've had a great weeks 1 through 6, well, week 7 doesn't really care about weeks 1 through 6. Week 7 cares about itself. And so making this commitment to say every single day we are going to grow, not only are we going to challenge our athletes to do that, but we as coaches, we as individuals are going to commit ourselves to do that. I might ask the question, is there a discrepancy between the standard that you want your athletes to live up to and the standard that you hold yourself to? Is there a discrepancy? Do you hold your athletes to a higher standard than you hold yourself to? Do you challenge them and demand of them physical excellence, but then of yourself say, oh, girl's locked up, so I can pass on the treadmill today. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I was young, I had to have the six-pack. I had to be ready to go out. Now we locked up, and it's like, she's seen all I got, so it just is what it is. Like, we'll figure it out, She likes me for my heart, And so do we hold the standard? And it's not about how you look at it. That's not the point. The point is that when we commit ourselves to a growth mindset, when we commit ourselves to growing into daily improving, even in just the tiniest of ways, the big fancy word is the aggregation of marginal gains, right? Thanks and gig 'em. It's a fancy way of saying that I'm just going to get a tiny bit better. I don't have to change the wholesale. I just have to change one click. And if I change a click here and a click there, those individual clicks might not mean a whole lot. But when I put all of those individual clicks together, it makes a giant change. And when we as individuals, as coaches, commit to that, guess what happens? Our athletes see that, and they start to emulate. Because I'm convinced that our kids will learn, not from the big, bold letters that we paste on the locker room walls, but our kids will learn from the quiet whispers of the actions of our lives. That's where they learn. That's where they learn to be men and learn to be women. That's where they go, that's why I want to be like, that's why I follow, because they watch and they see the quietest things that you might not ever think make a big difference. I still remember my coach coming to me after a workout. I'd stayed late for an extra workout, and he came up, Coach Marty Criswell, and he'd say, Mackey, what you weighing these days? A simple question. Why do I remember that? Because I remember a moment that he cared enough to care about how much I weighed. He cared enough to care to ask me a question, to notice the work that I was putting in, and to make a comment about it. Right? I learned in that moment, man, I can just notice something small about something and call it out, and it'll make a big difference. Right? Don't believe me? Just let your wife go get a haircut and don't say something. Hello, right? Right? And so it's a small thing, right? But here's my point, is when we commit to growing each day, our athletes see that, and it makes it easier for them to emulate. We want to hold them to a high standard, hold ourselves to a high standard. We want them to grow and become better, then we must grow and become better. Number 3, a servant leader, a great leader, loves well and loves well. Now, I'm not talking about that we give them a pass on things. I'm not talking that we're soft on them, right? Tough love is still love. Even in my tough love is still love, right? And sometimes we got to love them enough to kick them in the butt. Metaphorically speaking, don't anybody kick any, metaphorically speaking, right? Isn't that coaching, that you have to know when to kick a kid in the butt and when to give them a hug, when to chew them out, when to build them back up, right? Was it Bruce Arians, the coach of the Cardinals, that coach them hard and hug them after, right? That sometimes that love is tough love, and that we would say to a kid through word and deed, I love you too much to not let you be your best, and I love you too much to not give you my best. Because I love you, I'm going to hold you to a higher standard. Because I love you, I'm going to hold you to having a growth mindset. Why? Because I love you. Because I see in you what you don't see in yourself. I see the potential that you have. I see what you could become. I can see what could happen in you and through you. So I'm going to hold you to this standard. But because I love you, I'm going to give you my best. I'm going to hold myself to the same standard. Because I love you, I'm trying to get ahead here, playa. Don't eat up my minutes now. There we go. Because I love you, I'm going to give you my best. I'm going to invest in my intellectual capacity as a coach. I'm going to invest in my emotional leadership. I'm going to invest in knowing myself better and dealing with my own issues, because just because you have a title, coach, just because you have a position of leadership doesn't mean that you've somehow left your issues at the door, right? We've all got them. Well, I'm going to deal with them because I want you to deal with your issues, right? Just because I have a job doesn't mean my issues can't sabotage me. The same way your issues can't sabotage you. Because I love you, I'm going to give you my very best. Do you love your kids enough to give them your best? Not just in the X's and O's, but in the investment, even in the classroom. Hello! That I love them enough to be the very best teacher, not just the very best coach. I was with Coach Rutledge a few weeks ago. We were speaking at an event east of Dallas together, and he told the story of a young coach who came to him and said, "Coach, how much do you want us to do? We have to drive buses. We have to paint fields. We have to do laundry. We have to coach middle school, JV, varsity. We're here every night of the week, and we have parents, not just helicopter parents. We have bulldozer parents now. Like we have the recruiting issue. We have social media. We have all these list of rules and these seminars we sit through where they tell us all of the things that we can't do and all the things we can do, and the things that we can't do seem really, really intuitive, and the things that we can do seem really, really counterintuitive. And there's all this. How much do you want us to do? I mean, do we have to do it all?" And he said, "If that's what it takes. If that's what it takes to raise up the next generation, if that's what it takes to help young men become men, young women to become women, then yes, I want you to do it all because they're worth it, because you love them. And that means you got to get better. Even if you're great now, you got to get LeBron James, even though he's out opening up his new school, which is phenomenal. He's out in LA now doing his whole thing, even though he's arguably, it's not an argument, he's the best basketball player in the world, maybe even to ever have lived, right? Like even though all of that, I promise you, my man is working today to get better. Because he knows the championships that he has, the MVPs that he has, the stats that he has won't do anything for next year. Continues to grow, and he loves his fans, loves himself enough to give his best. I want to challenge you, love your kids. Even sometimes that's tough love, but love them. Number 4, a servant leader has empathy. Not pity, not I feel sorry for you, but that I am willing to recognize that you come from a place different than I do. That I'm willing to recognize that your life and your experiences are different than mine. And so like we said earlier, I'm going to seek to understand before I seek to be understood. That I'm willing to walk a mile in your shoes. And that sometimes this trait, it can be thrown to the side. It can be counted as not valid in the name of fairness. Well, it's not fair if I have empathy towards this kid. It's not fair if I give this kid a break and I don't give this kid a break. Well, listen, life's not fair, right? Fair is not equal, and equal is not fair. That when we understand where kids come from, when we understand there are just certain realities that kids are dealing with, we're not going to treat every kid the same. Because not every kid needs to be treated the same. That what I need and what you need are different. What you need and what you need are different. That we as adults have different needs. The same thing is true for a kid. That when we take the time to invest and to ask the question, what is it like to walk to this school, to step into my classroom coming from where you do? What's it like to be coached by me knowing the life that you're going home to? What is that like? And does that mean that you got to be, like an a la carte menu? No, just understand that kids come from different spots. And when we have empathy and we try to put ourselves and walk in their shoes, it might make more sense why they do what they do. Might not change the standard, but you might understand them a little bit better. And then you can coach them up a little bit better to help them reach the goals and dreams. A servant leader has empathy. And as I think about this, isn't it true that so often when we think of leaders, we think of the mean old cusses, like the generals and like the stereotypes in the movies, and it's my way or the highway, right? Here's the line in the sand, take it or leave it. I bet if I asked and went down row by row, seat by seat, and asked and said, if you had a take it or leave it type coach, if you had a take it or leave it, and that was just, there was no exception, there was no grace, there was no empathy, would you be here? I'd be willing to bet that more than one of you would say, nope, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here if my coach hadn't had some empathy. It may have been tough empathy, but it was empathy. Number 5, servant leader builds community. That they understand that we're better together than we can be apart. We'll talk in a few minutes about one of the elements of the curriculum that has a piece for parents. And as we understand that not every student is going to go home to a place where their parents want to invest in their growth as in character and in skill sets, that we understand that we build a community and we build a family not just in the house, but on a campus, in a locker room, in a team, in a position group. And that I think one of the great gifts of coaching is when coaches build and view their team, not just as a group of people, but as a family, as a community. When guys can go, man, I'm out here fighting for my brothers, and it's not a cliche, something they put on a t-shirt. When girls can go, these are my sisters, and it's not just some thing that they say, but it's something they believe deep down. That when you take time to invest in those relationships and to cultivate an environment in which they can grow. We were talking with, I went and spoke at a school in kind of inner city Houston, and they've not won a football game in a long, long time, multiple seasons since they've won a game. And if these coaches are steady, plowing away day after day, week after week, investing, going beyond the game, encouraging them, challenging them, holding them to a high standard, and yet giving them grace along the way. And they put out a simple call. Listen, whenever you need somebody, you call me. You get on a Friday night spot, you get on a Saturday night spot, right? They teach them, hang out with whoever you want on Wednesday. Let your Wednesday lunch friends be anybody, but your Saturday night friends better be chosen very carefully. He said, so if you find yourself in a spot where you pick some bad Saturday night friends, you call me, we'll come pick you up, no questions asked. Right? That's what they put out there. And he said, I saw him at coaching school last week, and what he said has started to happen that's been so encouraging, more encouraging than winning games, getting bigger, stronger, faster. So the most encouraging thing that started to happen is that athletes, when they find themselves in that spot on Saturday night, rather than calling coach, have started to call one another. They started to call their teammates and say, hey man, I'm in this spot, can you come pick me up? Used to, they didn't call anybody, they stayed there and got in trouble. Then they started calling coach. Then they started calling each other. I'm going to tell you, I don't know what his record is going to be next year, but in my book, that's one of the greatest championships, right, that he could ever have. Right? That's a story that stats can't tell, because now he's built a community in which all of a sudden I go, hey, look, I need you like you need me. And I'm going to be here for you. And all these things that we've talked about start to add up. I love you enough that I'm going to give you my best because we're in this together. Right? And now all of a sudden, right, instead of coach dictating rules, instead of coach dictating standards, all of a sudden it's coming from within. All of a sudden the athletes are saying, this is who we are. Not just what we do, it's who we are. Because you've built a community around in the locker room that understands that we're better together than we ever could be apart. Number 6, a servant leader has humility. Now, this is one of those traits. I think it's one that if you're not, like, it's one of those traits that, like, is great to put on the wall. It's easy to put on the wall, but it's really, really difficult to practice, right? It's easy to profess, but it's difficult to practice. We all want to say that we're humble, but nobody ever wants to be humbled, right? Like, it's one of those things that when push comes to shove, we kind of start thinking, well, humility, that's kind of like meekness, and meekness sounds like weakness, and like there's not a place for that in America, right? Like, there's not a place for weakness, right? And so that must mean that humility is kind of one of those standard staple put on the wall things, but never make it into our life type thing. And the reason I think that people are so shy or so gun shy to really put humility into practice is because they don't understand it. They don't recognize that humility is not a show of weakness, but it's a show of strength. That you cannot be insecure and humble at the same time. That if you're going to be humble, you have to be the most confident person in the room. Because apart from confidence, not just in what I can do, but in who I am, apart from that, I can't focus on serving you. Because if I stand on this stage and I think, man, what are these guys going to think about me? Man, what are they going to say? What are they going to say when they go back? What are they going to say when they're sitting in the car? And they're like, man, that bearded brother talked for 3 hours and he just wouldn't shut up. And he kept going on and on. And if I'm so focused on what you think of me when I stand on this stage, I can't serve you. I have to perform in such a way that ends up serving me because I get your praise, right? But the moment that I'm confident in who I am and what I can do, all of a sudden, instead of worrying about what you think of me, I can focus on how I can be my best to give you my best so that you get exactly what that you need to help you go from where you are to the next step. And the same thing is true in coaching and relationships over and over again, that when we are insecure, the focus is not on you, but it's on me, myself, and I, our three favorite people, right? But the moment that I become confident, I don't have to focus on me, I can focus on you. And it turns out that humility isn't really thinking less of myself or putting myself down or knocking my talents down. Turns out that humility is simply thinking of yourself less. It's not that I'm not going to be proud of what I can do. It's just that I'm going to ask about you before I brag about me. It's not that I don't want to talk about me. It's just that I'm going to be genuinely interested in you. It's that I'm going to genuinely take time to ask questions about you and get to know you and remember something about you, not just go through the motions, but genuinely care enough to care about you. You see, that type of humility is the kind of humility that says, I'm going to treat you like you're the most valuable person I've ever met, even though you're just some dude, even though I'm just some guy, even though you're just some lady, even though you're the same guy that I've known since I was in kindergarten, and you put mayonnaise on your French fries and Apple Jacks in your macaroni and cheese like an idiot. Like, I'm still going to treat you like you're the most valuable person I've ever met. I'm going to treat you the way that I would treat Chad Morris if he walked through those doors right there. I'm going to perk up a little bit. The boss walks in, right? Treat you the way with the respect you treat a cop. You drive by, even though you're going the speed limit, what do? You slow down a little bit, right? Because you respect the authority of, I'm going to treat you like you're the most valuable person I've ever met, even though I've just met you. You're just another dude, right? That is living out humility. And when we see these athletes every day, and we look at them and go, you know what? I'm going to treat you like you're the most important person in my entire world. That communicates something to that kid that they never see. Because you love them enough, you're going to hold them to a standard. It all starts with humility. Number 7, servant leaders lead. At the end of the day, leaders lead. And if people don't follow, you're not leading, right? The measure of your leadership is your followers. And so at the end of the day, what you do matters. Because we said it earlier, leadership is not a title, it's an action. It's what we do, not simply a title we're given or what we proclaim. It's not authority, it's action. And as coaches, we have the opportunity, and it sounds funny to say it this way, we have the opportunity to misuse the authority that we've been given. We can use it in a way that we don't lead anybody. Be domineering, right? We can be self-serving. None of those things are qualities of a leader. But you can also use, like Coach said earlier, the most powerful words in a kid's life, Coach says, we can use those to serve me, myself, and I, or we can use those words to lead kids to the next level in their development and their growth. At the end of the day, servant leaders lead, right? And they may not always be on the stage. They may not always have the accolades. But at the end of the day, say, I'm willing to do what needs to be done to get you from here to there, to invest in you, because I believe that you are worth it. The 7 traits of a servant leader, right? As we walk through these, is a great listener. Number 1 is a great listener, has 2 ears and 1 mouth. Number 2, a great leader has a growth mindset. Number 3, loves well. Number 4, has empathy. Number 5, builds community. Number 6, is humble. And number 7, servant leaders lead. So with those in mind, right, traits of a servant leader, here's what I want to do, because we're working through this, we're getting our hours in, we're getting this through. I want to change it up a little bit. And I want to ask you, and you got to lean in on this, I want to ask you to group up in groups of 4, 5, 6, however many you want, just in some type of a group. And I want you to walk through a couple questions just to discuss, and we'll talk about these for a few minutes, and then would like to hear from some of you, some of your answers. Number 1, which of these traits stood out to you the most? What's the easiest for you to put into practice, and what's the hardest? All right, as we talk through the 7 things, what's the easiest, what's the hardest? Which ones jumped out at you? Number 2, why do you think these characteristics are so important? Why do you believe that these traits, the ones that stood out to you, why do you believe that they're important? I might add to this question, Are there any traits that you believe should be on there that aren't? Or do you believe that any that were on there that weren't? You have a contrary opinion. Number 3, describe someone you know that exhibits these characteristics. Maybe it was your coach, the reason that you got into coaching. Maybe it's another coach on your staff. Maybe you can talk about a kid that you've seen these traits in on one of your teams. First question, which of these traits stood out to you the most? What was the easiest? What was the hardest? Might be curious if someone would be willing to share what's something that jumped out at them about the traits of a servant leader, and maybe what's difficult about, or what is easiest for them to put into practice. Anybody care to share? Y'all are on the opposite side of this. Now, normally you're asking the questions and getting the blank stares. Now you get to give the blank stares. So I don't want you to embellish this too much now. But would anybody be willing to share maybe a trait that stood out to you and maybe why?
I can say that that's what I'm hearing also is humility. Because usually when you get the organizational chart, they put themselves at the top right away.
Right.
You don't see that humility. and this program turns it around. It says, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to do this for you.
That's right. Yeah, that's perfect. You know, in it, truth, often we think of leadership as being getting those that follow me to achieve my goals. I want to get people to follow me so that I can reach my goal. But that really leadership looks like the leader say, how can I help you reach your goals? And that's that reversal. It's a great switch of servant leadership. And I guess a great switch of leadership, period. So thanks, Coach. I appreciate that. Anyone else want to jump in on that and one that jumped out at them and why? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I thought that one that was easy for me is love, because everything has to come from the heart. And children can see that, and students. If you're genuinely caring for them, then they're going to do what they're expected to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like here in our district, of course, we're going with our 7 habits of being a leader. So it's a win-win situation. So we want to start with the heart and making sure, of course, we balance with the heart and thinking also with their head and their brain, because it has to be a balanced situation.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Now, isn't it interesting how teenagers today can sniff out inauthenticity, right? If you're not authentic, they know it from a mile away, right? But the moment that they know that you are who you say you are, that you will do what you say you will do, that they can count on you, isn't it amazing? They'll run through a brick wall for you, right? Right? And how, if you look maybe across the student schedule, right, how they could point through and you could say, well, why don't you perform well in this class? Right? And there are obviously a host of issues, but there's a sense that it's not that the kid's not smart enough. It's not that that doesn't have the capacity to do well. It's that it's a response to the authenticity. It's a response to the buy-in that student feels from the teacher. What do kids say all the time? And I don't like the way that they phrase it. What do they say? Well, Miss don't like me. First of all, there's a lot of levels there, right? But it's not about, there's that sense of they perceive that there's not a love being sent to them, so they're not going to invest back. But that same kid comes to athletics, and it's not because football or basketball is an easier subject, right? In fact, that's a classroom that's harder than any other. It's because that coach is vested in them, and they believe that coach loves them very, very much. So interesting thoughts there. Great. Number 2, why do you think these are so important? Right? Is there any thought as you roll through? I think we've kind of hit some of that, but what about these things? Why are these so important to not just your success on the field, but ultimately your legacy and your impact? Any thoughts on the second question?
I think it's a framework of I think we keep saying, making young men and women into men and women. I mean, this is the framework. I think if you follow the things that you have put up there, I think that's a start anyway.
Yeah.
To being sincere as a person and letting them know that you're sincere.
Yeah.
And then, as they say, it's after their hearts and after their mind. And to me, that's why all of them are so.
Yeah, absolutely. And they communicate in many ways. They all together communicate that I genuinely care about you. Right? It's been said many times, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. And even though that can become cliche, it can be said at many events like this, the reality is it's just true. Right? You got to drink water so you stay hydrated, and kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. Like they're just two true statements, no matter how many times you say them. Number 3, I might be interested to hear who's someone in your life that exhibits these characteristics well. Was there a coach, teammate that exhibited these well? You go, man, when I think of these things, I think of fill in the blank. And it's okay that nobody else might know that person. I think there's just value in calling out somebody's name and say, man, this person, right? For me, Marty Criswell, right? My coach, man, he exhibited these well. My grandfather exhibited these well. He chose to be my dad when he didn't have to, right? He was on his way to being an empty nester, and then I showed up to the scene, and he hit reset, right? Servant leader. Someone maybe shout out the name of someone in their life.
Coach Page.
Yeah.
Coach Page.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Kleckner.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. My wife. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Whoever that person is for you, I would encourage you to reach out to them today, whether it's text or phone call, email, if you want to go old school, snail mail, however you do it, I would encourage you to reach out to that person and tell them, hey, we were at this deal today and we were talking about the traits of a servant leader. And with every single trait that was given, I couldn't help but think about you. And I just wanted to say thanks. Like I wanted to encourage you and let you know that the way that you live your life makes a big difference, and it made a big difference to me. And so today I thought about you. So I'd encourage you to reach out to someone that exhibits these characteristics and encourage them in that way. All right, so this last session that we'll walk through, looking at time, we'll walk through this section, what we call the ought and the is. And this is really the invitation. Right, as we kind of think about the things that, kind of the framework that I try to work around, is that I want to inspire, I want to equip, and then I want to invite. Right, I want to inspire you to live into something greater. I want to inspire the next generation to live into something greater, to connect the dots between sports and life so that they can live into the fullness of their creative purpose. But I don't just want to inspire them, I want to equip them. So that we give them the tools and we help them connect those dots. But then, beyond that, we want to invite them to do something with what they've been given. And in many ways, this is the invitation for you. This idea of the ought and the is. At this time of year, it's easy to get fired up about what ought to be and what could be and what should be. Right? This is the time of year where we're together, we do mission statements, we do purpose statements. What is it that we want to be about? Right? Not just what's your why, which is very important. Not just why are you here, but what do you plan to do about it? What is it that you are going to purpose in the next year? And we get into this time, if we're not careful, it can be real easy to get hyped about it and then end up doing very little about it. Because it turns out it's easy to talk about what ought to be, right? Like I can stand up here and I can talk for a long time about how it ought to be that in any restaurant that I go to, guacamole ought to be free. But in every restaurant I go to, it's extra, right? It's not the way it ought. It's 2018. Like somebody, I'll tell you who I'm going to vote for in 2020, the person that makes guacamole not extra at Chipotle. That's the person that's getting my vote, right? And so there's just, it not ought to be that way, but it is, right? It ought to be that I could go anywhere in the state of Texas, pull out my phone and have 4Gs. I'm going to tell you right now, there's some place I could drive 10 minutes outside of town. I got nothing. I could go to Africa, be sitting in a hut watching a lion eat a giraffe, and I could FaceTime my kids. I drive 15 minutes outside of town. I got nothing, right? It ought not be that way. And it would be easy to stay over here on this soapbox of what ought to be, but it'd be really, really difficult to do something to make the change, to make it what really is. At this time of year, it'd be really easy to talk about what kids ought to do, what parents ought to be like, what ought to happen this season. It'll be real easy to think about and get hyped about what ought to happen, and it'll be really difficult to make it the reality of what is. And it's in that gap, I believe, that coaches lived. It's the difference between the ought and the is. And as we think about these things that we believe, we think about the purpose statements, and we think about why we're here and what it is that we hope to accomplish, all of the things that we say we believe will be evidenced by the action that we take. Because action is the evidence of your belief. It's the evidence of the belief in your purpose, the belief in your why, the belief in action is the evidence of your belief. What you do matters. And if your belief does not lead you to action, do you really believe it? I would say no. One of my favorite stories is a story of an acrobat from the early 1900s. He was a tightrope guy. He would take and set tightropes across, he'd set all kinds of stunts and walk on tightropes across buildings. And one of his biggest stunts was a stunt in which he took a tightrope and set it across Niagara Falls. And he put out to all the news organizations, all of the people around America and Canada, that he was going to put a tightrope and he was going to walk across the tightrope, across from America to Canada, across Niagara Falls. And so the big day comes, and they've done all the preparations, and they've put the tightrope out. He shows up there on the American side, and people are all kinds of there in all different walks of life. Some people are there because they're like, man, you can't do this. Right? They're the doubters, the folks that are saying, you can't do this. You're going to die. And so they think they have some moral obligation to stop them. There are other people who are just kind of curious, right? They're just there for the show. They're like, hey, I'm going to see what happens. Like nothing's happening on TV because it doesn't exist. And so we'll just see what happens, right? We'll see what goes down. And there were other people who were genuine believers who thought, man, this guy could do and make history. So as he began, he said, how many of you believe that I can walk across this tightrope? There were a few people. Right, ones that wanted to see history, they may raise their hand enough that they could count and say, I was here, but they weren't leaned in enough, right, so that other people would notice. And so the man gets on the tightrope and he begins to take a foot on the wire, one after the other, all the way across Niagara Falls. He gets to the other side into Canada, and people are going crazy over there, right? And I mean, the Canadians are super nice, and so they're just high-fiving them and celebrating, go, man, this is incredible. And then he says, how many of you believe that I could get back on this tightrope and walk back across Niagara Falls to America? And they were like, as nice as they were, like, whoa, hang on now. Like, you just did it once. Like, let's not test your luck. I know they say winners don't quit, but like, quit while you're ahead, man, because like, you just defied all odds. Don't try it again. He said, no, how many of you believe I could do it? A few hands, but most folks have thought, hey, you don't test your luck. He gets back on the wire and walks all the way back across Niagara Falls to America. And there, America's, because we love winners, man, they're just celebrating him like, dude, you did the impossible twice. That is unbelievable. Man, you are the guy that high-fived, and they're taking pictures, the flash bulbs are going, and it is just an incredible scene. They're going crazy. And then he says, how many of you believe I could take and do this blindfolded? They're like, dude, you done it twice, why not 3 times? Let's see what happens. They say, we believe, and off he goes, blindfolded, back and across. Man, it's just chaos. All right, this is the coolest guy that has ever lived on the face of the earth. And then he says, how many of you believe, sensing that the crowd would just believe in anything, he could do anything. How many of you believe I could push a wheelbarrow across this tightrope to the other side? And they shout, we believe. And he said, how many of you believe I could put a person in that wheelbarrow and push it all the way across? And they shout, we believe. And he said, how many of you would volunteer to get in the wheelbarrow? And nobody raised their hand, right? You see, the evidence of our belief is action. Did they really believe? Did they really believe that he could do it? Oh, no, because they didn't get in. Because if they really believed, they would have gotten in the wheelbarrow. Do you really believe that what you do is worth it? Do you really believe that you can change lives? Do you really believe that you can shape the next generation, that tomorrow's leaders are built in today's locker room, in your locker room? Do you really believe it? Because if you do, your actions will reflect it. You see, the evidence of your belief is your action. But it's easy to get motivated today, right? And I hope that you do, right? It's easy to get motivated today, but know the day will come when that motivation will wane off. I got motivated for something once, right? I got motivated about 3 years ago. I was 330 pounds, right? I was big enough and strong enough to pick up a house but I couldn't run around it, right? I had about a 500-pound bench press, 700-pound squat. I could take 405 pounds overhead press, no questions asked. I was a big, strong dude, but one flight of stairs and your boy was out. You know what I mean? Like for me, like 4 sets, well, like 4 reps, that was cardio, right? 3x3 working set, 3x4, we're doing cardio. You know what I mean? And so I began to realize pretty quickly that I had something broken on the inside, right? And it wasn't just my cardiovascular endurance. Right? I began to realize that there was something in my psyche that wasn't right, because I got to a point when I said, you know, I ought to lose a little bit of weight. I ought to drop down to 290 pounds. I dropped 40 pounds. And I genuinely believed, as I started losing this weight, that if I got as small as 290 pounds, that no one would listen to me speak. That I would be too skinny to have a voice on a stage. Now, to be crystal clear, in no book is 290 pounds skinny. But in my mind, I thought if I was that small as a defensive lineman in the NFL, that no one would listen to me speak. Because I got into this place where my identity was found in what I could do and in my size and not who I was. And friends, I hope that you're the best coach that ever puts on a whistle. I mean, I really genuinely believe, and I hope that you are the best coach to ever call a game. But know this, that if your identity is found in what you do and not in who you are, the day will come when what you do gets taken away, and then what? Whether it gets taken away because you make a bad choice, whether it gets taken away because somebody doesn't like the way that you parted your hair or whatever other reason somebody gets fired, or because you just simply retire and you go out on top and ride off into the sunset, the day still comes when you don't get to do what you do anymore. And so who you are is infinitely more valuable than what you do. So as I began to realize that, I had to do something. All right, so I was motivated to make a change, right? Motivation is the transformation of your desires. And my desires changed. I said, you know, I don't want to find my identity in what I do and what I have. I want it in who I am. So I decided to make a change. I chose 3 years ago, September 25th, 2015, after double fisting steaks at a wedding in San Diego, that I was going to go vegan. And vegan means, judging by some of the way the heads popped up in the faces, vegan means you don't eat any meat products, right? No animal product. Comes from an animal, I don't eat it. So for those of you that don't know what that means don't eat Whataburger, don't eat barbecue, don't eat fajitas. For those of you who don't know what that means, you see what I'm saying? Like I just thought, you know what, this is the hardest thing I could think of to do. And so I'm going to do something hard to make a change. And so I called my wife, I called my bride, and I said, baby, listen, I'm going to go vegan. Old girl laughed at me for 3 minutes and then hung up the phone. I was like, what? Well, this is not right. So I called her back and said, baby, did we have a bad connection? Because I was talking and then I just heard you laugh and then hang up the phone. So I must have dropped call. I realized I said something that funny. And she said, no, we have a bad call. You just call me talking stupid. Like you're going to go vegan. Like you think chicken is a vegetable. How are you going to go vegan? Like you can't do it. Like it's not, and you call me, I don't have time for your games. I'm trying to take care of the kids. And so you go nonsense, like I just don't have time for it. I said, well, what'd you say? She said, I don't have time for your nonsense. I said, no, before that. She said, I said, you can't do it. I said, bet, right? I was motivated, right? All you got to do to motivate a man is have his wife tell him she can't do it, and all of a sudden he wants to do it, right? And so I was motivated, right? My desires had changed. I wanted to change something about me, but the problem is motivation starts to wear off. And my motivation started to wear off when I got back to Texas, because on every corner in the state of Texas is a Whataburger. And the aroma, that fresh, sweet patty, just carries on the Gulf Stream, like on the airway, you know? And it's like, it's a coup, man. And you just start smelling, you start thinking about going 300%, right? That triple meat, triple cheeseburger with mustard and pickles, with jalapenos, McWhata size with the apple pie and a sweet tea to boot, right? You start thinking about it, you're like, yeah, right? You're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And it's like, it could matter if it's lunch or dinner. At breakfast, you get that honey butter chicken biscuit. Like you're ready to go in, right? Open all night, get them taquitos late at night. I know some of you came late at night after doing some things. You roll into Whataburger and get a couple of taquitos, right? They're delicious. But I was like, wait a minute. Vegans don't eat Whataburger. But they literally don't have, like I could go order some pickles and onions. Like that's what I could order. So I'm like, what do I do, right? My motivation started to wane. You get it, right? New Year's Eve, New Year's resolutions, right? You say, this is going to be the year I'm going to lose that freshman 15, like from like 12 years ago. And like, this is my year, right? I'm going to spend less, save more, right? And you get all excited about it. And then you're like, man, I want to get a six-pack. But then Tuesday rolls around and you're like, I also want some tacos. You know, it's like motivation wears off, right? And so you got to make a choice at that point. Am I going to be committed enough to only let my desires change? Or am I going to be committed enough to let my actions change? Am I going to make the step up? Am I going to make the transition from just letting my motivation be transformed to discipline in which my actions are transformed? You see, if motivation is a transformation of our desires, discipline is a transformation of our actions. That changes what we do. And so I had to make choices. I had to choose to hang out with different people. I had to choose to surround myself with different recipes. I had to unfollow some people on Instagram. I had to follow some new weird people on Instagram to see what they were eating. I had to figure some stuff out, you know, and I had to change what I did. And as I started doing this, people would ask me, they'd be like, hey, isn't it difficult not to eat meat? And I'd be like, yes, it's difficult. Like, have you ever had brisket? Have you ever had sausage? You know how delicious a hamburger is? Like, yes, it is hard, but I made the choice. But still, even though my actions changed, there was something inside of me that every once in a while, somebody might know what this is like, there was still that desire inside. I was like, you know, I've been doing pretty good for like 3 months. I can have me a cheat day. Yeah, he knows. Yeah, right. You know, I was like, I had a good week. I could just have one cheat day. What's one? Yeah, well, 1 is 2, and 2 is 3, and 3 is 4, and the next thing you know, like you're 330, right? Like you're all in, right? So it's like, you know what? Because even though my actions had changed, my thinking hadn't changed. I hadn't changed. Just what I was doing had changed. So I had to make another choice. Was I willing to be committed to this goal long enough that it didn't just change my desires or my actions? Was I willing to be committed long enough that it would change my habits and thereby transform my thinking? And I realized that this had happened because one day somebody asked me, I was 8 months, 10 months in, I lost about 85 pounds, and someone said, hey, isn't it difficult not to eat meat? And before I said yes, I was like, no, man, it's really not that hard at all. They were like, really? And I was like, yeah. It's actually not that hard because I developed habits that transformed the way that I thought. And it turns out right habits make the hard stuff seem easy. But you got to be committed long enough to create them. We see kids all the time. They're committed to get changed desire. This is going to be my 6 weeks, all A's. I'm going to be on the honor roll. I'm not going to wait until the night before the test to study. I'm going to study, get this, 3 nights before. Woo-hoo! Going all in. This is right? They're motivated, right? And they may study, they may do some homework early on, right? But then they get the grade, and what do they do the next 6 weeks? Do they keep doing it? Do they start studying now 5 nights before? Do they do more homework? Do they study longer? They go, no, I got an A last 6 weeks, so I can go back to my old ways this 6 weeks. They weren't committed enough that it changed them. The ones that want to see change, be it in their life, be it in their culture of a locker room, be it on their legacy, on their impact, they've got to be committed enough that it doesn't just change desires or actions, but it changes the way they process what's around them. It changes the way that they think. And this process of change, it wasn't complicated, right? It was actually pretty simple. It just wasn't very easy. That change is simple. It's just not easy because it all hinges around this simple flow that motivations changes our desires, our disciplines change our actions, our habits, our thinking, and our thinking changes how we reach our purpose. But at any step along the way, we can throw in the towel. At any step along the way, we can go, you know what, I've done enough. I've changed what I want. I changed what I do. I changed what I think. At any point in the way, we could throw in the towel and say enough is enough. I wonder if you would be committed enough to your purpose that you wouldn't simply stop at changing your motivation or your desires, your actions, but you would change the way that you think, that you would be committed enough to let your actions follow your belief, that you would be willing to stand in the gap where maybe others before wouldn't, that you would be willing to stand in that spot because there's so many people who want to stay in the ought. There's so many people who want to talk about what ought to be for teachers, what ought to be for students, what ought to be. And they're consumed, they're committed enough to change their desires. They're committed enough to change what they talk about, but they're not committed enough to do anything about it. And can I tell you, your kids will walk through your locker room doors. They need coaches that are committed enough to stand in the gap, to be a servant leader that'll say, you know what, I see what ought to be, and I see what is, and I'm willing to stand in the gap. I'm willing to be the one that'll show up early and stay late. I'm willing to be the one that'll spend extra resources. I'm willing to be the one that'll love even when there's no clear return on investment. I'm willing to be the one that'll give a second chance and teach what to do with it. I'm willing to be the one that'll do what others won't so that you can achieve what others say that you can't. I'm willing to be the one. See, I believe that the place that coaches live, the best coaches, it's the same place that servant leaders live. It's in the gap between the ought and the is. And they're not satisfied with what should be. They're committed to making it what is. I want to ask you, do you believe in your purpose enough to be committed to the point that you build the habits that'll make the hard things seem easy? So when you stand in the hard place, in the gap, others look at you and go, how are you doing that? How are you still in it? You mean you've been coaching for how long? How long have you been in the game? You're still out there with the JV guys. You're still at the middle school. Those cats are barely human. How are you still doing it? Because I was committed enough to build the habits that would change my thoughts, that I could stand in the hard place and make it seem easy. Friends, make no mistake, what you do matters. But you stand in the gap. Because there's going to be 500, 1,000 athletes this year that need somebody like you. That need somebody like you to stand in the gap and to make a difference. Friends, I want to invite you. Go to the hard place, the gap between the ought and the is, and let the story of your career, let the story of your legacy not be the coach that had grand vision but no execution. Let the story of your career, let the story be said, let the stories be told at your retirement party when kids come back and they go, you know what, Coach, you were on the Mount Rushmore of my life. You were one of the 4 most influential people that ever stepped foot in my life because you stood in the gap to make what ought to be what is. You stood in the gap for me, and it changed me. Friends, I want to challenge you to stand in the gap and know that the reward of the action that you take, the reward of your action will be your purpose. You will see it. It'll come to life and you'll look back and you go, why am I doing this? Because when I go and I serve this kid, I see the look on his eye. I see the light bulb go off, and it'll fuel you to keep on going. There'll be many days where you won't feel like doing this. Can I tell you that? There'll be many days that you won't feel like doing it. But don't forget that servant leadership, living with purpose, being a servant leader, being a coach, it's not a feeling, it's a choice. There will be days that you won't feel like doing it, that you won't feel like standing in the gap. Remember in those days that whether you choose to stand in the gap or not is always your choice, because you are the most powerful person in your world. You're the most powerful person in your world. Whether you choose to stand there or not is always, it's not parents' fault, it's not administration's fault, it's not other teachers or other coaches' fault, it's not referees' fault, it's not the weather's fault. If you choose to stand in the gap, it's because you chose. I want to challenge you today. Stand in the gap. Make the choice to make the ought what is. So thoughts there, and I hope that in some ways it's a challenge. Hope in some ways that sits under and marinates a little bit in the crock pot that is your life, and you go, yep, where am I standing? How committed am I? Am I committed for more than just a transformation of desire, action, but of thinking? And I hope that you'll accept this as an invitation. More than that, I hope you accept the invitation to say, yep, in this place, in Weslaco, Texas, whether I'm in purple or I'm in black, whether I'm on this side or I'm on that side, my kids can count on me 365 days a year to stand in the gap. Now, with that said, I had a couple questions, but looking at our time, I want to bounce through I'll let you guys take a picture of this if you'd like, some questions that you can process through. What challenges do you see ahead that could keep you from taking the next step? This isn't easy. What's a regular action you can start taking today that will make the hard stuff seem easy? And what's the impact that you want to make on your team, your school, and community? What do you want your athletes to say about you when you're not around? Some interesting questions that as you answer those might drive some of the actions that you take. So with that there, what I'd like to do is move into a time where I can tell you a little bit about the 2 words, character development, the ways that we're going to equip you day by day to help coach beyond the game. We've done the inspiration, right? We've given the invitation. We want to equip you and talk through what we're going to do. Here is what we're going to be looking at and the resource that you are going to be given this year. It's called the 2 words, character development curriculum. And at its core, it is a 36-week video-based curriculum in which you'll get a 7-minute video, and we'll watch one here soon. You'll get a 7-minute video that each week I will communicate the character trait of the week defined and described by 2 words. All right? So we're going to watch a video here in a minute called Knock Knock. And in this, we talk about the value of opportunity. We talk about the idea that there's opportunity all around, but sometimes we miss it, not because it's not there, but because we've not done the work to build doors for opportunity to knock on. And so in this week, we would be a great time for that theme as you look to roll it out before a big game, whether it's opportunity to make playoffs, opportunity to lock up a certain position, an opportunity to jump in front of someone. You say, look, we have an opportunity on the field, knock, knock. But then there's also opportunities in the classroom. There's also opportunities to serve in the community. There are opportunities. And so you'll see the connection points. But each week there's a 7-minute video defined and described by 2 words. Beyond that, you get an online workbook that has lessons for coaches, captains, athletes, and parents. And we'll look at that in just a minute. All of this is online. And so there's no workbooks that you have to purchase or buy. Coach is taking care of all of that. Everything is online, so it's easy to access. And every single one of you will get your own user login so that you can access the videos online as well as the workbooks. So know that each of you individually will have access to that. So what I want to do now is show you a video. In this one, I'll note that this is a video that we did live with a group of athletes from Tatum, Texas, way out east, a football team during off season. Now, I want you to know that though you're going to see football players here, look at the intro sequence and you'll see all kinds of sports. And note that the curriculum is gender and sport neutral. So just like this week, in this video, you might see football athletes. In another video, you would see volleyball players, or you'll see basketball courts, or you'll see tennis courts, or you'll see a track. So visually, your athletes will see all kinds of sports. So it's not a football thing that coach is asking other sports to do. This is just a sports thing. In the curriculum that we write gender sport neutral, and we make sure to bring in examples from all sports, not just from one. So this is an example of a video. And what I might suggest is that the first 7 minutes of your athletic period at the beginning of the week, you bring everybody together, whether you're taking attendance or stretch or whatever the case may be, and then you'll pull up and then have the opportunity to play the video. So we'll make sure the sound is good, and we'll drop the lights, and we'll show this video called Knock Knock. And this is one example of the 36 videos that you'll get for each week of the year.
And that is the truth, no matter what anybody says, don't you dare forget it.
All right, fellas, man, it's excited to be here with you guys again today. Man, it's the 3rd time this year. I'm excited to be with you. Today I want to encourage you. I got 2 words I want to share with you. 2 words, here they are. Knock, knock. Knock, knock. How many of you, show of hands, have heard the phrase, when opportunity knocks, you better open the door? You've heard it, haven't you? And what people are saying when they tell you that, what they mean when they say, you better open the door when opportunity knocks, is this, that opportunity is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Eminem made a lot of money saying, don't lose the moment. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. When it comes your way, don't miss it. They'll say that you've got to be the lucky person. They'll say that you've got to kind of be the guy that lives the hashtag blessed life, that you've got to be the guy that is in the right place at the right time, and when opportunity comes, you better open the door, because if you don't, you'll miss out. But here's the problem, is that opportunity doesn't work like that. Opportunity is not a luck thing. Opportunity is not in the right place at the right time, maybe, just maybe, it'll come your way, or knock on your door kind of thing. Opportunity doesn't work like that. Opportunity is everywhere. Opportunity is absolutely everywhere, but the reason people will tell you that if you miss it, that if you don't open the door at the right time, is because they never hear opportunity go knock, knock. And the reason they don't hear it is not because opportunity's not there. The reason they never hear opportunity go knock, knock is because they've never done the work to build doors in their life for opportunity to knock on. See, you got to understand that opportunity is everywhere. Right now, you and I, we live in the most opportunity-rich world. There is nobody in the history of the world that has more opportunity than you right now. Even if you are the poorest person in all of your town, you don't know anybody that has less money than you, you still have more opportunity, more access to education, more opportunity to reach your goals and dreams than anybody in the history of the world. Opportunity is everywhere. But so often people miss it because they don't do the work to build doors for opportunity to knock on. Fellas, if you don't hear the knock knock of opportunity, then you need to build a door in your life. You need to step up and start building a door of opportunity in your life for it to knock on. You see, access to opportunity will never equal success. And listen to me, you've got all the access in the world. But access to opportunity will never equal success. You know what success equals? You know how you get to success is not by having access to opportunity, but by doing action, by taking action with the opportunities that you've been given. Action equals success, not access. Think about it like this. How many of you, if I gave you tickets to the Super Bowl, so all you got to do is raise your hand. I'll give you 50-yard line seats to the Super Bowl. You go see the Texans beat whoever they're going to play next year, because you already know the Cowboys won't be there. You go see them all. Come on. You'll go and see them, and you see Queen Bee at halftime. You'll do the whole nine right. I'll give you all the access, VIP, backstage, all the buffets, all the food you can eat. I'll give you all of that. And all you got to do is raise your hand. Who raises their hand? Every single one of you, right? You want to go to the Super Bowl, right? But what happens if I give you those tickets the Saturday before Super Bowl? You're sitting right here in the locker room. You hadn't caught a plane. You haven't flown to the game. You're just sitting around. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, man? You got to catch up. Oh, I'll get there in the morning. I'm just going to drive. What? It's halfway across the country. Super Bowl Sunday comes on. You're sitting at the house in a recliner, eating chips and salsa, just dipping it. Got some queso in your belly button with your offensive line friends, just doing your thing, right? And you're not there. I would ask you, what was the point of me giving you those tickets? What good was all of the access, the backstage, the seats, the VIP passes? What good was the access if you don't take any action to actually get to the Super Bowl? You would say that access was what? Worthless. Absolutely worthless. And it's the same way with opportunity in your life and mine. It's the same way with opportunity. You can have all the access, all the opportunity in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, if you don't build any doors for an opportunity to knock on, if you don't take any action, your access is absolutely worthless. Fellas, listen, man, some of you guys have been given some crappy cards in life. Some of you have been given some bad parents. You've been given some bad home life. You've come from some bad situations. I'm going to tell you, that's not your fault. You can't control the cards that you're given in life. You can't control who your parents are. You can't control how tall you are, how short you are. You can't control those things. But let me tell you what you can control. You can control the action that you take with the opportunities that you've been given. And so if you don't like the way that your life is going, if you don't like what's happening on the football field, if you don't like what's happening in the classroom, then step up, stop complaining, and start building some doors. Pick up a hammer and start building doors in your life. You want to change your life? Then build doors for opportunity to knock on in the classroom. You don't like what's happening in your life? Then build doors for opportunities to knock on in the weight room. Listen to me, the first 30 minutes of your day will determine the rest of your day. You want to have a great afternoon, you've got to have a great 30 minutes. The first thing you wake up. Because the first 30 minutes of your day will dictate the rest of it. You want to have a great afternoon, you've got to have a great morning. And it comes with building doors for opportunity to knock on. Fellas, you've got all the opportunity, all the access in the world. And if you want to be successful in sports, you want to be successful in the game of life, it has nothing to do with luck. It has nothing to do with being in the right place at the right time. And it has everything to do with the amount of doors that you build. Because the more doors that you build, the more times you can hear opportunity go knock, knock. Let's have a good one today, man. Yeah.
Elite on three, get to your spot, get ready to go. Let's have a great day in here. Elite on three, 1, 2, 3. Let's go.
So in that short 7 minutes, there was a lot that was said. And if you only played that video and read the quote of the day, which I'll give you each week, if you only did those two things, you see there the quote of the day, I don't know if this will work or not, but if you only did those two things, press play and read the quote of the day, then your intentional game plan would take you about 12 minutes a week. And you did no preparation. It's done for you. But understand that if you want to go beyond that, understand if you want to do more than just press play and read a quote, each week you're going to get a workbook. Now this is for a different lesson called Good Luck, but each week you'll get an overview that'll show you lessons for coaches, captains, athletes, and parents. Here's the goal for each of these groups. We'll give you an overview, 30,000 foot of what we're looking at. And then on the coaches page, we'll give you, you see in the green box, an opportunity to be on the lookout for. Be on the lookout for one of these three things. And when you see it, react and respond and reinforce this trait. And what it'll do, you don't have to change your practice schedule. You don't have to change the order of what you do. All you have to do is be on the lookout for it. And when you see it, call it out, and it'll help connect the dots from the field to the character lesson of the week. Like I mentioned, you have your quote of the day there each week. And then for your captains, each week we give you a section, and whether you use it for your captain's council or you use it for your whole team, this section is designed to tell the leader and to show the leader, here's what a leader does in light of the character trait of the week. Here's the action a servant leader takes. And so gives you a few questions to talk about. Again, here in the green box, it'll give you a few questions that serve as a nice icebreaker or that serve as the basis for an assignment or for a lesson if you were to spend a few minutes going through this with your whole team. For your athletes, each week, you'll have a section that will help make it personal. There it is. So this section for the athletes will always help draw this back to their own personal goals and their own dreams. How will this character trait of the week help me reach my goals and my dreams? Gives you a few questions to talk about, and then periodically throughout the semester, we'll encourage them to come back and revisit what their goals are, what they've written down, and where they are in the process of achieving them. And then some questions that will help walk them through. And then each week for mom and dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, we give them a one-pager that allows them to see what you're talking about in the classroom, and then gives them 5 questions to talk about at home that will continue the conversation. Now, a couple things to note about this. If mom and dad can log into Gmail, then they can get a unique user access so they can watch the video at home and have direct access to this paper. On all the videos, there are Spanish subtitles, and there are, for the parents page, there's a page that's in Spanish as well. So if they prefer Spanish as their language, then that resource is available as well. Now, we all know that we have students and folks on our team that come from homes that won't utilize this. And so what I would encourage coaches to do, if that's the case, and you know that's the case, take the time to talk about the family as a team, or the team as a family unit, and what these values mean to you as a volleyball team or soccer team, what it means to you as the offensive line. What does that mean? and to take the time to process through and to play that parent role. Is it right that you have to do it? No. But is it what it takes? Yeah, maybe. And so by talking through and not just saying, well, if parents don't do it, then that's on them. By taking and standing in the gap, you can show your athletes what a husband or a wife looks like, what a father or a mother looks like. As you talk about the family unit, they don't have one at home to mirror. You can be an example for them to see what that looks like. And then each week, you'll have a printable that will have the quotes of the week along with the theme that you can print off and put up on the locker room bulletin board, similar to some of the recruiting pages that coaches will send out. You can have that and put that up each week. Now, you'll note that it says week 1 through 36 or whatever the case may be. You can, though you don't have to, go in order. What we find is that most schools, if they're in season, bounce around based on the theme that best fits where they are in the season. And if they're in off season, they tend to go in order. Now, I'm not going to dictate for you what y'all do. I'm just going to describe what has been done. So it's not prescriptive, but descriptive. And to say, really, the only wrong way to do this is to not do it. Beyond that, you can pretty much choose however you would like. All of the lessons can be converted into a document. We have instructions on how to do that using a site called DocHub. And so if you utilize Google Classroom or Canvas or any other online platform, educational platform, you can integrate this into that so that then you have the assignments there, you can distribute it there, you can also share the videos there. For you as coaches, the videos are downloadable so that you don't have to be at the mercy of the internet or technology when you go to show it. You can download it prior to and have it ready to roll so you don't have to worry about that hiccup. We'll have coaches who will simply take and show, say, the athlete's page on the screen like this and ask them to pull out a sheet of paper or a 75-cent composite journal and write their answers on a piece of paper. We'll have coaches that will print these pages out and have them put it in a folder or in a binder so they build a leadership page or a leadership journal that they can look back on over the year. I'll tell you that we designed and chose colors such that if you print in black and white, it still looks like it was intended to be in black and white. It doesn't look all janky and messed up. So if you choose not to print in color, you'll still get a clean print and a clean looking page there. Others use Google Classroom, many different ways to do it. You choose what best fits your program. So you have all of those things there. Each year, we'll create 36 new lessons so that you never have to rinse and repeat the lessons that you have. If you want to, your online library will grow each year so that you can always go backwards and look at a lesson that we showed last year that would be really applicable to your athletes today. But you'll also have 36 new lessons that you can access and use moving forward. So each year we'll have new lessons for you. Now, that said, you guys will, if you've not already, in the days coming, will receive an email from a gal named Wendy Wyke. Our email will be wendy@twowords.tv, and she's going to give you instructions in this email. Again, like I said, we keep it really, really simple. 5 of the 6 full-time staff are full-time Aggies, so we've made it really, really simple. And so what we've done, and there'll be instructions on best practices, how to access it, all of that. But I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version right here. And you can go to twowords.tv. On the top of the panel, there's a thing that says Members. You click on that. You can access it on your phone, on your computer. You click Members, and that's where you log in at. You'd also go to twowords.tv/my-account if you want to type it in direct. Your username is everything in your email address before the @ sign, right? So my email is Mackey@twowords.tv. So in my case, my username would be Mackey, right? If yours is whatever, Stephen.Mackey@weslecoisd.net, then it would be Stephen.Mackey. Everything before the @ sign is your username, and your password until you change it, is Wesleco Athletics, all lowercase. Okay? So if you want to hop on your phone or your computer tonight and start looking at it, that's how you access it. Your email address before the @ sign, and then your passcode is Weslaco Athletics. Again, if you've not already received it, you'll receive an email in the days to come from Wendy with best practices, with how to get your parents signed up, all of those things will be in the instruction email that you'll get. Also know that you can email Wendy at support@twowords.tv with any questions that you have trouble accessing, something doesn't show up, something's not right, support@twowords.tv. Wendy leads our support team, and she will have your question answered in no time flat. And so any questions that you have, best practices, anything you need, know that you can reach out to Wendy, and she will get that to you. This is my contact information. That's my email. That's my personal cell phone number, all of our social platforms. And then I put my personal website, MackeySpeaks.com. And the reason I put that on there is because I host a podcast called the Mackey Speaks Leadership Journal. And what I do during the school year is 3 times a week, I post a 7 to 10 minute message in the spirit of the curriculum lessons, in the spirit of what we talked about today, but just in 7-minute chunks. Post that as a podcast, which you can find on iTunes. And then on the website, write a blog post that goes along with and corresponds with that episode, and then gives quotes, reflection questions, and more resources to go along with that lesson. So just like we do with the curriculum lessons where there's questions to ask, quotes to share, and resources to grow with, I do the same thing on the podcast 3 times a week. And so if you're looking for more content to share with students, more content to grow because you want to be committed to a growth mindset like a servant leader does, want to get 1% better, this is a resource, a free resource to help you do that. You can find that by searching the Mackey Speaks Leadership Journal on iTunes or just going to MackeySpeaks.com, and you can check all of that out. There's something like 130 episodes up, and so there's lots of content there for you to dive in. Anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to ask or to reach out. Like I said, that's my personal email and personal cell phone. It's a privilege to be with you guys and gals today. Thank you all for who you are. More importantly, thanks for who you are, for what you do, for the ways that you're going to change lives over this year. I appreciate hanging out through, I know it's a long day and a long afternoon, so I appreciate you being here. I hope you were encouraged. I hope you were inspired, equipped, and I hope that you'll accept the invitation to stand in the gap between the ought and the is, to not only win some games, but to change some lives. Thank you all so much.